Is it okay to ask the IELTS examiner to repeat the question if you don't understand? Find out the answer to this question and more in this IELTS Master Strategies IELTS Speaking Tips Advanced Strategies for Difficult Questions video. Are you ready to get started? I'm ready to get started. Let's go. First, let's take a look at some common speaking problems that IELTS candidates have. First, you don't understand the question. Next, you need more time to think of an answer. And finally, you understand the question, but can't think of an answer. 3 big problems, but no problem anymore. Let's take a look at what you're going to learn in this lesson. First, you'll learn what to say if you don't understand the question. You'll learn what to say if you need more time to think of an answer. And you'll learn what to say if you understand the question but can't think of an answer. However, before we get started, it's very important for me to tell you the best strategy for IELTS speaking. Can you guess what it is? I'll tell you what it is. The best strategy is to answer the question. Okay, if you can answer the question, you don't need to use any of these strategies, so whenever possible, be ready to answer the question. However, sometimes life is not that easy. The IELTS speaking exams are not that easy. And for these times, this Advanced Strategies video will help you. First off, if you don't understand the question, what should you say? In speaking part 1, the examiner can't rephrase the question. They cannot rephrase the question, but they can repeat it. So you could say, "Sorry, could you repeat that question, please?" Or, "Sorry, could you say that again?" Or, if you have a long question, "Sorry, I missed that part. Could you repeat the question?" Now that part, that last part, refers to the end of the question. So if you have a long question, you could say this. For speaking part 2, the examiner can't help you, but you should be able to understand the questions for speaking part 2. And you have the card with the questions right in front of you, so this should be okay. For speaking part 3, the examiner can rephrase the questions. Yes! So you could say, "Sorry, would you be able to rephrase that question?" Or, "Sorry, would you be able to say that question in a different way?" All right. But my advice, in all 3 parts, don't get stuck on any questions. If you still don't understand what the question is, just try your best. Try your best to answer the question and get ready for the next one. You don't want to lose your focus or get nervous just because you don't understand a little bit. So if you don't understand, try your best and then get ready for the next question. If you need more time to think, some of these questions are difficult. Some of them you can't answer instantly. Even I can't answer every question instantly. I know. IELTS Master Lee can't answer every question instantly, but it's true. Some of these questions are pretty difficult. However, there are some strategies you can use. First, for speaking part 1, these questions are usually easier. So repeating the question and using short hesitation markers is probably your best strategy. Of course, it's best to answer these without hesitation if you can. Now, a hesitation marker is something that you say when you're not quite sure. For example, we have, "What kind of work am I doing?" "Actually," or "My family?" "Well," or "Let's see." And then you give your answer. You don't want to pause too long, especially for these part 1 questions, but a small pause or rephrasing the question repeating the question is very, very common. Very common, even for native speakers. Don't do it every question, but you can definitely use it sometimes. For speaking part 2, you have 1 minute to prepare, and you can write some notes if you want to. And good luck. That's the only advice I have for this. And for speaking part 3, these questions are longer and more difficult, so you can use different hesitation markers. Repeating the question yourself is also a good strategy. For example, if the examiner asks you, "What are some of the ways that people commute in your country?" You can say, "Some ways that people commute in my country, well, I think da-da-da-da-da," and then you can give your answer. Or you could say, "That's a really interesting question. Now, some IELTS teachers will say, oh, don't say this. Everybody says this. Okay, you can say that's a really interesting question if it's a really interesting question, and some of them are. In speaking part 1, usually there aren't any really interesting questions. They're like, so do you study or do you work? That's a really interesting question. No, it's not. It's not an interesting question. That's a normal question. But for speaking part 3, there are some really interesting questions. So it's okay to use this phrase for speaking part 3. And then the last one, I've never thought about this before, but I think, and then you can give your answer. Sometimes I really haven't thought about a question before, and you probably haven't either. So you can use this phrase for those kinds of questions. And again, you don't want to use these after every question, but they're definitely okay sometimes. And finally, if you understand but can't answer. Okay, for speaking part 1, you should be able to answer the questions. Let's be real. If you need to make something up, then make something up. For example, what's your favorite movie? My favorite movie? Oh, well, I really liked Titanic. It was such a moving film. Do I really like Titanic? Does IELTS Master Lee really like Titanic? Not really, but it was the first movie that I thought of when I was answering or making this presentation. So you can just make something up. It's not that difficult. Try not to choose something crazy, but if you can't really think of anything, then just make something up. That means create your own idea, your own answer. For speaking part 2, sometimes you may need to make something up. Now, this is a little bit more difficult than speaking part 1. Try to choose an area or a thing that's easy for you to talk about. Perhaps you can think of something that's very closely related. For example, if they ask you about your favorite smartphone app, but what happens if you don't have a smartphone? Actually, I had one of my students have this problem. You could say, actually, I don't have a smartphone, but I know Facebook is available on smartphones, so I'd probably say that. On Facebook, you can do this and that and this and that, and then you can talk for 2 minutes about Facebook and what it probably is on a smartphone. I'm sure anyone can think of something or something slightly related. YouTube. You're watching YouTube. You could talk about YouTube. That's another good idea. Now, a body of water. This is a hard question for some people. Some people don't go to beaches. They don't go to lakes. They don't go to rivers. And so it's really hard for them to talk about. So maybe you could start with saying, to be honest, I haven't been to the ocean since I was 5. So my memory of the time isn't too great. And then you could talk a little bit about what you remember about your trip to the ocean or whatever you think the ocean will be like. You're just kind of making up a story. If you say you haven't been there since you were 5, then I think the examiner will understand, you don't have a super good memory of it. And if you can still give the story or give this talk in fluent English, you'll still get a great score for your IELTS speaking. The key is to remain relaxed and try to give the best answer you can. And for speaking part 3, first, try to have the examiner rephrase the question. If you still don't know or you still can't answer, do your best to answer anyway, or answer something very closely related. For example, how easy is it to find a home in your country? I could say, how easy is it to find a home in my country? I've actually lived in 5 different countries since I grew up, so I don't really have my country, but I can talk about the United States of America because I lived there for a little while, and in that country, yada, 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 finish the question. Or if they ask you, which do you think are more interesting, reading novels or factual books? You could say, honestly, I don't like reading novels or factual books, but if I had to choose, I suppose novels because yada, yada, yada. Now, it doesn't matter if you don't like reading or if you like reading. You just have to choose something. They just want to hear your fluent speech. You don't have to be a genius or super, super, super smart to get a good score on IELTS speaking. You have to be a fluent speaker. You have to have strong grammar, good pronunciation, and accurate and precise vocabulary with good collocations. That's more important than having super intelligent, amazing answers. All right, so these are the 3 strategies that you can use. And finally, my advice, sometimes there will be questions that you can't answer directly. Try to find a way to answer these questions that's as close to the original as possible, but don't worry if you can't answer everything correctly. Keeping calm is super important. Your assignment for today is to, number 1, find a set of speaking questions. Number 2, either by yourself or with a friend, practice using the strategies we've learned today for responding. Number 1, if you don't understand the question. Number 2, if you need more time to think. And number 3, if you understand but can't answer directly. And last, please tell me in the comments. Tell me in the comments what you learned from this video and what you want to see next. That's all we got. Thanks so much. Work hard, and for more IELTS practice, visit IELTSmaster.com. Join our email list for a free ebook with Task 2 topics. Also connect with us on Facebook.com/IELTSmastersite. And finally, please, please, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And last, tell me, what would you like to see next? I'm looking forward to hearing from you in the comments. Thanks so much.